The Kansas City Chiefs just got some good news about the AFC playoff picture after taking down the Pittsburgh Steelers on Christmas Day. You guys are listening to the KC Sports Report. I'm your host, Michael Darcy, and today I have the pleasure to be joined by my good friend Josh Fan of ShowMeFootball.com and ArrowheadAddict.com, and together we are going to go over the AFC playoff picture. The Chiefs currently hold the number one seed in the AFC playoffs. They clinched that with the win over the Steelers on Wednesday. The Bills have the 2 seed, and since the Chiefs beat the Steelers on Christmas, that means since the Ravens won, they leapfrogged the Steelers for the number 3 seed in the AFC playoff picture, winning the AFC North. And so Buffalo's at 2, and the Ravens are at 3. The Houston Texans are the 4 seed. The Pittsburgh Steelers move to the 5 seed. And 2 teams that are still in the hunt are the Chargers that are currently slotted in at the 6 seed, and the Denver Broncos hold the final spot in the AFC playoffs with the 7 seed. But the teams on the bubble, the Colts, Dolphins, and Bengals, all technically have a shot at making the playoffs, although that does seem highly unlikely with just 2 games left to go. Josh, I kind of wanted to get your thoughts on the current AFC playoff picture, because I feel like the Chiefs not only beating the Steelers on Christmas guaranteed the fact that the home field advantage in the Super Bowl is going to run through Arrowhead Stadium again, but it also helped them get a very favorable bracket where in order for either Baltimore or Buffalo to play the Chiefs, they're going to have to play each other first in the divisional round, which is just huge that you only have to play one of those 2 teams. But Josh, what do you think?
It's great, right? You know, they beat the Steelers, which meant that the Ravens are basically winning the AFC North. And that is great for the Kansas City Chiefs because, like you said, they still have to do their thing. They have to take care of business first on their end before they can even think about seeing the Kansas City Chiefs. And that was really beneficial a couple years ago when the Chiefs got the bye for the playoffs 2022 season, and the Bills and the Bengals had to play each other. And then we eventually got that Chiefs matchup with the Bengals in the AFC Championship in 2022. Chiefs came out on top, but you kind of wonder, did that game against the Bills, just kind of take enough out of them that they didn't have enough against the Chiefs when it came time to play them. And this just guarantees, really, Michael, that you're going to get a really good matchup in that divisional round. And then you can just kind of gear up for the AFC Championship. Now, I don't want to look too far ahead because the Chiefs could still, it's football. Anything can happen. But, man, yeah, the bracket is lining up very nicely for them. I mean, you look at the teams that are down there at the bottom, I'd take the Chiefs over any of those guys, whether it be the Chargers or the Broncos if they make it to the divisional round. Yeah, I think I'm taking the Chiefs.
Well, here's the thing. The Chiefs can beat any one of these teams in the playoff picture, but when we look at matchups and the easiest path to the Super Bowl, playing either one of Baltimore or Buffalo is just going to help this Chiefs team get there sooner because, listen, you could beat both Buffalo and Baltimore. You proved that last season. But if you only got to play one of them, your road to the Super Bowl is a lot easier. And looking down at some of the other teams in the AFC playoffs, the Texans look bad. The Steelers look really bad. Yeah. These are 2 teams that have been on the steady decline for the past month and a half. And do you think that the Chargers or the Broncos could come into Arrowhead after already playing in the wild card round and upset the Chiefs at Arrowhead Stadium?
No. They've owned the matchup historically with Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes in the AFC. Why would that change in the postseason when they have to come into Arrowhead, especially the Broncos too? Like, Chargers at least have Justin Herbert, and that's always an interesting quarterback matchup. But like, do you think rookie Bo Nix is coming in here and upsetting the Chiefs in the postseason? No. And you also made this point, Michael, on your AFC Roundtable show. But it's like, are you getting Bo Nix or are you getting Bo Picks? Because anytime they try opening up the offense with him, he just throws a bunch of interceptions. And you're going to have to open up the offense if you're trying to beat the Chiefs in the playoffs.
And Josh, they can't run the football. They cannot run the football in Denver. And honestly, if I'm looking at all of these teams, the Broncos can't run the football. The Chargers can't ever since they lost J.K. Dobbins. The Steelers, all right, I guess. They looked good against the Chiefs' run defense, but they didn't have Chris Jones. Texans can't really run the ball without Mixon, and Mixon's kind of been, good to start the season, but hasn't been good recently. You know that the Bills and the Ravens can run the football. But again, the path to the AFC Championship game is beating one of the teams like the Texans or the Steelers or the Chargers or the Broncos, assuming that is what the bracket ends up being. But those are all very favorable matchups for this Chiefs team. And so I just think that the Chiefs are in a fantastic spot when it comes to just winning one game, getting in the AFC Championship game, and then you play Buffalo or then you play Baltimore. And it's not a guaranteed thing. The Chiefs still have to go out there and handle business, like you said.
Yeah.
But who's going to bet against them? Go win one playoff game after having a month off and a month to do study on any one of these teams that you could potentially face. Bo Nix is not coming into Arrowhead and beating this Chiefs team when it matters. Justin Herbert's not with that very young, inexperienced team. I don't think that CJ Stroud and a banged-up Texans team can. And the Pittsburgh Steelers, we saw them on 4 days rest. Russell Wilson, don't let Russ cook. You let Russ cook, and he's going to get cooked. Like, it's just, I don't understand why, anyone would want to go out of their way to play both the Ravens and the Bills in the same bracket. If you could avoid one of them, you're cooking.
Well, and last year it was so tough, right? You had to go through the Dolphins in the wild card round, and that was still a favorable matchup for the Chiefs, especially still with it being at home and the Dolphins being from the South where it was warm and that game was extremely cold. But the Dolphins had an explosive offense, right? Like, that's still a team you don't really want to see. They had to go through them. Then they had to go through Buffalo in Buffalo. Then they had to go through Baltimore in Baltimore. And they ended up doing it with a much worse team. So all that being considered, this year, you have home field advantage throughout. You only have to play 2 games instead of 1 to get to that Super Bowl. It just feels like, why wouldn't they make it? Why would they not make it?
Yeah, and it's hard for me to just say the Chiefs are locked into a Super Bowl. I'm not going to say that.
Yeah.
But again, the question that I pose to you is, if you only have to face either one of Buffalo or Baltimore, and you have the current AFC playoff picture line up like it is, the Chiefs match up well with all of them. And in a one-game playoff, when you need this team to go out there and find a way to win, whether it's a one-score game or not, who are you betting for? Who are you putting all of your money to go out there and get the job done in the playoffs? And if you don't say the Chiefs, you're lying to yourself.
Yeah.
No one's picking Josh Allen. No one's picking Lamar Jackson, because we've seen this story before, Josh. We've seen Patrick Mahomes with a worse team beat 2 teams last year that were significantly better than the current versions of their team.
Yeah, no, I mean, we saw too, Michael, in somewhat of a playoff environment in that last week of the season, what the Chiefs did against the Steelers. They beat them by multiple scores. That was only the second time they did that all season. That game was with the 1 seed on the line. So it was almost kind of like a playoff game. And they came out and they pretty much curb stomped the Steelers without even really still playing their best game, with no Chris Jones on a 4-day turnaround. It just feels like this is a better situation than they've ever really had to go all the way.
Well, and listen, we're going to talk about this at length for the next 3 weeks, because I find it so fascinating that we know what the playoff picture is as of today. There's some favorable matchups. And so I'm not going to ask you which one that you would rather face, but we're going to talk about that in a different video. But I will ask you, do you think that we see the playoff picture hold up as is? Do we think that the Chargers and the Broncos are going to get in, or does one of them miss out? Because looking at it, the Colts, they're on the 8th seed. They're close to getting in. And the Broncos' next 2 games are the Bengals and the Chiefs. And the Bengals are winning out. And I think a couple losses from the Broncos away from finding a way to sneak in.
Yeah, so, man, it's really tough to predict. So with that last Bengals-Broncos game before the season ends, that's basically a playoff game for those 2 teams, right? I like the Broncos in that game because I think, their defense is good enough, but they've also, Bo Nix has shown enough. I know we were just kind of crapping on him earlier, but he's shown enough that he can beat that Bengals team with that defense. Come on. And that's what I would like to see happen, which sounds ridiculous. Oh my gosh, you're cheering for the Broncos. Yeah, because I still want no part of the Bengals in the postseason. They're not in the playoff picture now. I hope it stays that way, because I want 0 part of that team, even though they've been terrible, even though they have a bad defense. It's Joe Burrow, it's Jamar Chase, it's T. Higgins. It's that team versus the Chiefs. No way. So that's what I'm pulling for.
And, you know, going to Super Bowls, as we have seen over the past couple of seasons, it's all about matchups. Does this team match up well with our team? And historically, over the past couple of seasons, we have drawn very favorable matchups. And so that should be the same thing this year. We should not want to see the Bengals get in, because if they get in, they're one of the most dangerous teams to this Chiefs squad because they know how to beat them. They just are a matchup nightmare. The Broncos aren't a matchup nightmare. The Chargers are not either. So, like, picking and choosing which good versus which evil you want in, I'll root for the evil of the Broncos getting in the playoffs if we avoid the Bengals. But
Yes.
Josh, I think really my final question for you, I guess I want to ask this to the audience, and then I'll ask you where you can plug your stuff. But Chiefs Kingdom, where do you think, you know, the matchups lie for this Chiefs team? Do you think that you would rather face the Bills or the Ravens? Which team do you think the Chiefs match up better with? We're going to talk about that in a different video. But Josh, before we get out of here, my final question for you is, where can the people find you?
You can find me here on YouTube, Show Me Football. That's the channel name. You can check out my work on showmefootball.com and arrowheadaddict.com, where I write. You can also follow me on Twitter at ShowMeFB.
And all that stuff, guys, will be linked in the description of this video. As for me, if you have not already hit the subscribe button on this channel, you are missing out. We do daily Chiefs coverage here on KC Sports Report. It is the best way to support not only Josh, but myself. Subscribe to both of our channels. It takes less than 10 seconds and it's free, and it greatly helps us out. Until next time, guys, thank you for watching this video. And as always, go Chiefs.